Hey guys, what's up? It's Andrew here with the Loam. Excited to tell you about the new Shimano XT. This is an exciting group. Now we knew it was coming from last year, but Shimano has taken everything they did for XTR and has applied it to XT and SLX, which they just launched. So let's dig into it, get into the details. We just got back from the launch and we are super excited to share everything with you guys. Now, for the launch of XT and SLX, Shimano invited us up to Bellingham, Washington. It's a beautiful part of the Pacific Northwest with an amazing trail network. Guides for the trip included Thomas Vanderham, Joel Kintner, and Bryn Atkinson. So we had some amazing people showing us around and also some athletes on hand to show us what this stuff is really capable of. We're gonna have a full written review on the site of this, full walkthrough of all the tech specs, everything else, weights, prices, and everything, so you can head there and check that out. I'm gonna kind of gloss over stuff briefly in this video and give you more ride impressions than tech. So let's start in with the basics though. The new Shimano XT retails at $1,148 for the full XT build on your bike. SLX, for the same full build, comes in at $819, so it's much more budget friendly than Shimano XTR, but carries over a lot of the same features. So what they launched last year in Crested Butte, Colorado that we attended was the new XTR. So they redesigned everything, literally from top to bottom on the bike. That includes brakes, drivetrain, pretty much everything was rethought, all the ergonomics. I mean, literally down to the smallest bolt was rethought. And XT is basically a development of that same process. So it's not going to be a massive departure from XTR. Basically what you're going to be seeing is the application of everything that happened in XTR trickling down to XT and SLX. So to be completely honest with you, if you did a blind test, you probably could not feel the difference between these two drivetrains and brakes. They feel incredibly similar even though the price points are different. What Shimano really changed was materials and coatings, but I'll get a little bit into that later. So one of the big things was, you know, the rider fit for these products. Like, who is XTR for and who is XT for and who is SLX for? And Shimano took a long time to decide on that and sit back and really think about the whole product line, especially since I think they made a good choice to do a 2-piston and 4-piston option for the XT brakes. I'll let Nick Murdoch of Shimano North America share a little bit of what he thinks is the best rider fit between XT and XTR and why they went with what they went with in each category.
With XTR being specifically a race focused group, you end up with I mean, we tried to make the perfect brake for enduro racing and the perfect brake for cross-country racing, and kind of keeping in mind that, of course, XTR has to be the pinnacle of performance for trail riding as well. Like, that's what people are going to use it for. But it does honestly create a little bit of a no man's land in between, right? And so you end up asking yourself the question, like, if I've got like a 120 travel trail bike, which of those brakes is the right one? And ultimately what we decided was that we kind of actually like where we are right now with the XT generation of having one common brake lever with two different caliper options, 2-piston or 4-piston. Like, it worked out great. So that's exactly what we decided to do for the new XT group is common brake lever, 2-piston or 4-piston option. And so I think you get like a real trail tune, but kind of for different identity of bikes and riders, and kind of fits all applications. Yeah.
One of the big things they changed with XTR that has again trickled down is the servo wave modulation. So the actual servo wave track in the brake lever that makes the brake lever feel the way it does has been tuned. A lot of people have complained about Shimano's on-off kind of feeling, and this completely solves that in my mind. Again, brakes are all down to personal preference, but I think this is a really, really solid feeling brake. The power delivery is very smooth, but the lever feel is just phenomenal. Another thing that they also changed was the ergonomics of the lever and the way the lever attaches to the bar. So there's actually 2 points of contact, the clamp and a second point of contact on the bar. What the point of that is during heavy braking, when you're applying large forces to the levers, this eliminates a lot of flex in the lever and gives a more confident braking feel. All of that translated really well to the steep, loamy trails we were riding in Bellingham, Washington. Pads are still offered in metallic and organic. Both are redesigned compounds, again, a trickle down from XTR. And both do a really good job. This is also the first time that the Frieza technology is going to be seen on XT and SLX brake rotors. Again, this is, basically just a heat management technology, but a really phenomenal version. Now, the other huge area that there's a change, and this is again trickled down from XTR last year, is in the shifting. Shimano launched what they call Hyperglide Plus, which is basically a system that allows you to shift under power both up and down. So traditionally, when you're banging through gears, you have to kind of let off a little bit to shift into a harder gear. That's essentially a design of the derailleur wanting to drop the chain down onto the next cog, and it slams down. This is a problem that no one's really thought about because it's just something that we've taken for granted with bikes. Shimano kind of took a step back and rethought that and said, why can't we have full power delivery through the shift going up and down? So that's what Hyperglide Plus is. What they did was change the interlink plate on the chain. So they changed the chain itself and the tooth profile. And basically what happens now is that power is transferred to 2 gears simultaneously during a shift. So shifting both up and down can be done under complete load. And actually, the more load you apply to the bike, the better the shift is. So this is something that takes a little bit of getting used to, and actually when you go back to a normal drivetrain, it feels really weird. I will admit, I came back home and hopped on a SRAM drivetrain and felt like I was gonna blow it up because I was so used to shifting under power after being in Bellingham for a couple of days. I can't stress enough how awesome this system is and what a game changer it actually is. It may seem silly, like why would you need to shift under power, but there's a lot of situations where if you are in trails that go up and down, if you're trying to hammer out of a corner, shifting under power is really nice, and it's something that I never knew I wanted, but absolutely now it's hard to live without. So it's a really good technology, and seriously, I never missed a single shift during the entire trip, whether I was riding in the mud or in the full sun, on the gas as hard as I could possibly be. Smoothest shifting I've ever had out of any drivetrain. For what it's worth noting here, this is also fully e-bike compatible. I'll let Nick share a little bit more about that, but basically Shimano has made these systems so that they work perfectly with e-bikes and actually work better with e-bikes because of how Hyperglide Plus works.
It's worth mentioning, actually, aside from just the new components that we're talking about, that our QC standards are such that everything that Shimano makes is e-bike rated, right? Like the current 10-speed Dior stuff is e-bike rated for sure. And of course, all 12-speed chains are e-bike rated from the get-go. So of course that applies to all the new component groups as well. So all of the 12-speed stuff is e-bike rated, and you can shift multiple gears at a time, and you can have your 1051 cassette. Not only are those new 12-speed groups e-bike compatible, but they actually shift better on an e-bike than they do on a regular bike. Like Hyperglide Plus, it relies on chain tension in order to work, and so when you've got the little bit higher chain tension that an e-bike gives you, the shift is like perfect every time.
Now another big change for XT, again trickling down from XTR, is the ergonomics in the cockpit. The shift lever and dropper post lever have 30 degrees of rotational adjustment from the brake lever. That allows you to fine tune your reach on the bar. They also have a 14mm sliding track in and out that lets you adjust your reach from your thumb to the trigger. Again, this is a really great system, allows you for fine-tuning adjustment. I have big hands and it gives me the opportunity to push my levers farther in than some of the other testers and people that have smaller hands. So this is a great change. I love that Shimano did this. Another thing that's slightly different than XTR is that the rubber pads on XT and SLX are not replaceable. If you're familiar with XTR, you will also know that because of the new Hyperglide Plus system, Shimano had to move to a new driver. Now, before the conspiracy theorists get all excited and say that this is a new thing to try and sell more parts, it basically was something that was necessary because of the patents surrounding 12-speed drivetrains. At the moment, you do have to run either a select group of aftermarket hubs that have the driver, or Shimano has full XT wheel sets and XT and XTR hubs and drivers. So that's up to you guys to decide. I'm sure as time goes on, the aftermarket will fill in to allow for more options for the cassette to mount on various different hubs. A lot of people are asking about upgrades from 11-speed to 12-speed. We'll see how that plays out. One big thing here with XT and XTR is, a lot of people don't understand what the difference is. Why should I get XTR? Why should I get ST? Why should I get SLX? Is the price the only difference? What else is changing? So the big thing that changes between a lot of these is coatings and materials. So the feel of stuff, the performance of stuff really isn't going to change that much. There's slight tweaks, bearings instead of bushings in XTR, little things like that, but primarily what's going on here is materials changes. Ultimately it's up to you. I'll let Nick talk a little bit more about what he thinks the difference between XT and XTR is and who should buy what, but the great thing is that you can mix and match. So you can run XT brakes with an XTR drivetrain. You can run XT cranks with the rest of an XTR drivetrain. So Everything's fully interchangeable and intermixable.
In XTR is kind of a no compromises choice, and XT is kind of as much of the function as possible, but maybe a little bit heavier. But some people might honestly identify with the aesthetic of XT, just like I want a black group on my bike, and so that's the way to go. Beyond the aesthetic though, right, like if you're just talking about function and performance of each individual piece and what would you choose, like that's certainly a really good question, right? That like I wouldn't feel like I need to stick to just one component group from top to bottom in order to build a bike. So I've been thinking about that, right? That like where is the extra performance like the most gain? Like where is your bang for your buck, right? And of course, if you want to drop as much weight as possible, then going with XTR is the obvious choice. And so in something like the brakes, like weight really is the difference, right? Like it's a materials difference and it's an appearance difference, right? So the XTR looks really, really nice, and it weighs less, but the power and performance, the modulation, the feel of the brake, it's basically exactly the same between XTR and XT and SLX.
So I'm gonna get in a little bit more of what I thought about this stuff out on the trail. I was really impressed with this stuff. You know, I haven't had a lot of chance to ride Shimano since the XTR launch. You know, obviously there were some heavy delays with XTR, and that gave us not a lot of opportunity to test this stuff. So it's been about a year since I've been on Shimano product for this new generation. And I will say, again, I'm blown away. Like this stuff is really, really good. Not to say that SRAM drivetrains are bad or the current XT and XTR stuff was that bad either. But this stuff is really a step above, and it's great to see Shimano in a level playing field with SRAM now on the market for 12-speed drivetrains. You know, I have to say the shifting on XT and XTR is really, really smooth. It has that nice double click that you can do as well, so you can shift 2 gears at once with the second click being slightly harder than the first to prevent a misshift. It's a very smooth, precise drivetrain. If I had to pick one word to describe it, probably precision, but it's also really quiet. Because of that new Hyperglide Plus, it actually quieted down the drivetrain substantially. So it's a very quiet system, very smooth shifting all around. Again, the brakes have an amazing balance of hard stopping power with modulation and control. You know, even in wet, tricky situations with tight corners, you're able to modulate that brakes and control the power really, really well going into a corners. You know, there's no accidental lockups, there's no on-off feeling. It's a great modulation from the start of the trail all the way to the end when the brakes are still hot. So that's another great thing, is that I did not notice any heat fade, any lack of performance from heat being built up in the braking system. So we're really excited to be putting these to the test. We're gonna be doing a 14 bike park tour this summer. We're gonna have XTR and XT on some of those bikes. So we're gonna be able to put them head to head this summer, bashing them in the bike park. So we're really excited to get a chance to do that and test this stuff long term. Thank you so much, guys, and don't forget to head to theloamwolf.com. I'm gonna link the website in the description below. You can check out the full written story with all the weights, prices, and everything else there. Check out all the photos. There's some really great photos that Sterling Lawrence and Paris Gore shot from this camp. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and see you on the trails.